Hello and welcome to the Zotero Webinar Series through the Graduate Writing Center at Teachers College, Columbia University. My name is Catherine Chengstall, and I am one of the consultants at the Graduate Writing Center, also your tour guide host for this webinar series. So the focus for this particular webinar is on using Zotero for storing and organizing your references as well as files. So if you're watching this webinar at this point, you have already downloaded Zotero, you are familiar with the functionalities of a reference or citation management software, and you have a couple of things in mind in terms of how to populate your library. So with this webinar, I'm going to be showing you how to collect references and kind of put them into your growing library, as well as how to begin organizing your references and or your files in order to keep everything in order for your different academic projects. So this particular screenshot should look very familiar to you at this point. Of course, you might not have as many reference entries as I have here, since I've already been building this library over the course of 3 years. You probably also don't have as many collections or these folders that you see on the left-hand side. Don't worry, these are things that take time, and as part of this webinar, I will be showing you how to start collecting your references so that you can keep things in order to make it easier for you to cite as you write, to create reference lists, etc. So one of the things to look out for before we really start talking about storing and organizing is taking a look at how your preferences are set up within Zotero. So one of the things that you probably have decided already is whether you want to save files in addition to citational information in your library. You can see on the left-hand side here that all of these boxes have been checked by me because I am interested in using Zotero not only to store my references, but also my PDFs. So depending on your needs, you may or may not be checking all of these boxes. Another thing to think about when it comes to storing and organizing is whether you also want to utilize the Zotero web library, also known as the Zotero server. If you're interested in accessing your citational information online, then it would be worthwhile to set up a Zotero account and to link it to your Zotero application on your laptop. So that's what this right-hand screen shows you here. I have these two boxes checked because I am interested in syncing my files as well as my citational information to my online library. At one point, after you use Zotero, perhaps after a semester or two, you might get a notification within Zotero that you have reached your storage limit. And so I wanted to share this as an FYI so you don't get thrown off. So as part of using Zotero, you get 300 megabytes of server storage for free. What that means is the server storage is unique to storing PDF files. And so the allowance you get as a free user is 300 megabytes, which is really not a lot. What I don't want you to get confused about is that this 300 megabyte limit has nothing to do with your local storage on your computer. So I have probably gigabytes worth of files on my computer, and that does not interfere with my citational storage through the Zotero server. So there are two things to keep in mind here. When it comes to storage, there are a couple things you can store. You can store citational information, which is free. There's no limit to how much citational storage you have. There's also file storage, which is PDF storage. And with that, there's a 300 megabyte limit for Zotero. The limit is higher with a software like Mendeley, but there is still a cap. If you are interested in purchasing additional file storage, meaning that you want more of your files on your computer to synchronize with the web library so you can read your PDFs online as well, then you might consider making a donation to Zotero for either the 2 GB plan or the 6 GB plan. And I think these costs are actually very reasonable given that Zotero is this open source software. But again, I don't pay for storage. I'm perfectly okay with my local storage, and I only use the web library to access my citation information, not my file information. So now really onto the heart of this webinar. So since we're interested in using Zotero for storing and organizing our references and files, the question now becomes, how do I populate my Zotero library with these references? And I'm pleased to let you know that there are 4 different ways, beginning with the drag and drop method, which is exactly how it sounds. This is particularly useful if you already have a large existing collection of PDF files, perhaps that you downloaded through Canvas, or files that were shared with you by colleagues or professors. So if you already have the PDFs themselves on your local drive, all you have to do is find the file and drag it right into your Zotero library. And I'll give you a little visual as to how to do that. A second way to add a reference is using the Zotero browser connector, something that I introduced you to in an earlier webinar. So you might have the Chrome browser, you might have a Safari browser. Again, in a previous webinar, I mentioned the Chrome browser connector is probably the most developed one. In order for this browser connector to be really useful for file storage, you want to make sure that you are logged into either Clio or TC Library so that you have access to the files themselves. And so with the connector, once you click on a particular icon, you will not only download the reference material, so the metadata associated with the file, but the file itself. And again, I will give you a visual demonstration of this in a moment. A third function is using the magic wand, which is not the official name, but the name that I'm giving to this particular function. And the magic wand function is best suited for pulling reference material from journal articles, books, as well as book chapters. And there's a reason for this, which I'll go into in just a moment. And as a final resort, if none of the 3 above functions work for you, then you can always add references into your library manually by individually inputting the required field information for the citation. All right, so starting with option number 1, the drag and drop method. So what you can see here in the middle of the screen are a bunch of PDFs with the PDF icon. So all of these files were on my computer, and I simply dragged and dropped them into the library that I was interested in. So I have all of this information in a sub-collection within the main collection, which is named after a course that I took. So with this particular method, as the name suggests, you simply find your file, drag it into the folder that you're interested in having the citation information. And not only will the citation information be imported into Zotero, but also the file itself. What this means, though, is that you will have a duplicate file. So not only will you have your existing file, but this file that you dragged into Zotero will also now belong to a Zotero folder or a Zotero location within your computer. And if you're okay with having duplicates, that's fine. I don't particularly like having duplicates, so I will then delete the original file I had because I enjoy using Zotero for organizing all of my files. So if you have file storage through the Zotero server, then any file that you see within your local library will also synchronize with the web library such that you will have access to the PDF through your web library. All right, so this is option number 2 for populating your library using the browser connectors. Again, the Chrome connector is probably the most powerful. That's the one I would recommend. Once you have it downloaded, you will see this little icon within your browser, and I'll be demonstrating this in just one moment. The third option is using the magic wand. So before I demo this with my own library, I just wanted to show you where you can find it. So across the top of Zotero, you'll find a couple of icons. The second icon is the one of interest, and this one here looks sort of like a magic wand. So if you click on that, this little menu pops up, asking you to input either the ISBN, a DOI, the PMID, or this other ID, which I'm not very familiar with. ISBNs are usually found for books. DOIs are associated with journals and journal articles, and PMIDs are basically the PubMed IDs. So once you have one of these identifiers known for a particular source, you simply type it here, hit enter, and that will populate your library with the source itself. And finally, this is what the manual entry method looks like. If you go back to the top of Zotero, you will find that green plus sign that will show this drop-down menu. So the most common citational sources are listed above, but if you have something that is not listed, you simply hover over more, and that will drop down a more extensive menu with a wider range of citational types. Anything from a blog post to interview to a manuscript to a thesis or dissertation. So once you select the type that you are working with, then it's going to show this window on the right where you would have to manually type in the required information. So the manual entry option is usually, again, a last resort. I sometimes will use a manual entry option for particularly old PDFs that are scanned, right? So if you have a professor who is scanning a book chapter from the 1960s and there is no metadata attached to that PDF, then you will unfortunately have to type in the information on your own. Manual entry is also really useful for two journals in particular that don't have DOIs, that don't provide ISBNs, and that don't get picked up by the Zotero browser connector. And those two journals are Harvard Ed Review, as well as TC Record, Teachers College Record. So if you are trying to create a reference entry for a journal article from either one of those sites, then unfortunately, the manual entry option is the option that I would pursue. Okay, so before we jump into folder organization, I thought I would take a detour now and actually walk you through how to use some of these functions that I just introduced you to theoretically so that you can visualize this. All right, so at this point, you should see my library. So at the top, you see my library. You also see a couple of group libraries, something that I'll go into in a subsequent webinar. If I click on that arrow, you will see my collections as well as sub-collections and even sub-collections. All right, so let's take a look at how we might use, let's say, the Zotero connector to populate the library. So let me open up Clio Columbia. So Clio Columbia is one of the library databases through Columbia. There's also TC Library, but I find that Clio Columbia has the more extensive collection. So let's say that I am looking for publications from Professor Haney Yoon. Okay, so I need to log in first. All right, so, okay, and I'm interested in articles. Let's say that the article that I'm interested in having as part of my Zotero library is this one here, Refashioning Gender Play on the Kindergarten Stage. So if I click on full text, so the full text is available, that's going to take me to a page that looks like this. All right, So there is the full text version, there's also the PDF version. So I can do a number of things in terms of how to get the citational information into my library. The method that I want to avoid is manual entry. So if I look to the top right corner, you will see this little manuscript journal article icon. If I hover over it, you'll see the note, save to Zotero through ProQuest. Right, so seeing this little icon tells me that Zotero has recognized this source. This particular icon is indicative of a journal article. So if I click on it, then it's going to pull the metadata from this site in addition to the file, since I am logged into Clio. But before I do so, it's important that I first indicate where I want all the citational information to go, because I have a wide collection of folders and subcollections. It's really important to indicate which folder I want all this information to go into. So let me just go back to Zotero for a moment. And let's say I want to store all this information in my miscellaneous folder. All right, so now let me go back to the website. I'm now going to click on that browser connector. You'll notice that full text PDF is highlighted. You get this little window. And so if I now go back to Zotero, you will see right here highlighted is that article, right? If I click on the little arrow, you will see that the file itself has also been downloaded. And if I click on the main kind of main entry, on the right-hand side, you see all the metadata for that file pulled into my Zotero library. So anything from the title to the author, publication, page number, ISBN, or ISSN, all that information is down. So I did not have to type anything in. All of that was downloaded with the click of a button through the browser connector. So the browser connector in general, I would say, is very good, especially for newer articles. This one's from 2020, so the metadata are rather complete. But one thing that I notice is that the title here is in title case, meaning that just about every word is capitalized. If you know the basics of APA style, 7th edition, you know that for journal articles, the title itself should be in sentence case, meaning that the words should not be capitalized, but in lowercase. So something that I like to get into the habit of is simply going in and just manually making this correction so that I don't have to worry about this later on when I create my reference entry. So I think it's just good to, anytime you notice some error, correct it on the spot so that you don't forget it later on. All right, so that was option number 2 in terms of using the Zotero connector to add entries into your library. So now let me show you another method. So if we go back to, let's say now I want to use the magic wand function. And let's say that I am interested in a book that I read a book review for example, the African-Centered Education Theory and Practice. So if I click on that, it will take me to Amazon. And one thing that I want to point your attention to is that if you look now to the top right corner, that Zotero browser connector shows a different icon. It shows a book icon because it recognizes that this particular source is a book and not a journal article. It's not a book chapter, but an entire book. So if I wanted to use the connector option to download the source, I can just click on that. But right now I wanted to give you a demonstration for option number 3, which is using the magic wand. In order to use the magic wand, as I mentioned a moment ago, you need one of 3 identifications, either the ISBN, which we have, the DOI, which I don't see here. DOI is generally for journal articles. The third one is the PubMed ID, which is not relevant here since I'm not in PubMed. But I do have the ISBN. There is a 10 one. There's also the 13-digit version. It doesn't really matter which one you use. I just use the first one. So I'm going to copy that. And if I now go back to Zotero, Again, I select the folder where I want the citational information to go. I click on that magic wand icon at the top. I paste my ISBN number. I hit enter. I wait for a moment and you'll notice that right away highlighted is this new book right here. And if I take a look at the right, you can see that everything that I really need is populated. Again, there is the mistake here that, although this is pretty good, this one here has it mostly in sentence case, but I noticed that after the colon, the T should be capitalized. So I'm just going to manually make that correction and hit enter. All right, so that is method number 3, which is using the magic wand feature. I personally really love the magic wand because it seems to be the fastest one. But one thing to keep in mind is that the magic wand option doesn't pull the file if it's available. So if you want Zotero to be used for file storage, I would recommend either the drag and drop option, which is option number 1, or the Zotero connector, which is option number 2. All right. So at this point, let me demonstrate for you option number 4, which is the manual entry. So if I wanted to give you an example of Harvard Ed Review, I mentioned that Teachers College Record and Harvard Ed Review are 2 journals where neither the Zotero connector nor the magic wand option will work. So this particular article right here is part of the Harvard Ed Review. And so you'll notice that if I click on the full PDF, generally, if an article has a DOI identifier, it would be somewhere near the bottom, which I don't see. I also don't see an ISBN code. So this will be a good candidate for typing in manually. But one thing that is rather promising about this is if I look at the browser connector, it does detect it as a manuscript, a journal article manuscript. So I'm actually going to click on this and see how it does in terms of pulling the metadata. So I click on it. And because I am logged in, it seems like the PDF was also pulled in. So now if I go back to Zotero, you see that it is here. And you know what? That actually worked out really well. So for Harvard Ed Review, even though there is no DOI number, and even though online you don't see the ISBN or ISSN number, through the browser connector, it is able to detect most of the information that I need. Again, I noticed a mistake of title case instead of sentence case, so that would be something that I manually fix. And if I click on the little triangle, I see the file downloaded as well. So in this case, I did not have to manually type in anything, but just to quickly demo, if I have, let's say, a podcast that I want to download, and let's say that it's just easier for me to manually input the information, then I simply select the source. You can change it here and just type in the information that you need, hit enter, and that will be saved. All right. So let's go back to here. So at this point, you should feel fairly comfortable with the 4 different ways of storing references and or files into your Zotero library. I want to spend the final few moments just giving you an overview as to how you could possibly organize your collections and sub-collections. So going back to Zotero, you'll notice that the main library is this orange icon. If you click on it, there is the option to create a new collection. So if I select that, this little menu pops up and you can just create a name. So let me just call this one sample. Everything will be organized in alphabetical order. So notice how the sample folder or sample collection is now somewhere near the bottom. If I'm interested in creating a sub collection or subfolder, I click on that and I can create a new sub collection. Again, I can name it. I'll just call this sample sub collection. And if you're interested in further sub-hierarchies, you can click on that and create yet another sub-collection. So again, you can make this nested organizational system. So now that I have my folder and subfolder created, if I want to start populating things, all I need to do is simply drag and drop things from my main library. So actually, since we were just working with my miscellaneous folder, let's say that I'm interested in having this article be part of my sample sub-collection. So I just click on it and I just drag it until I see that little plus sign and I drop it. And now if I click on my sample sub-collection, you will notice that that reference information is now there along with the PDF. When you drag and drop or move items across collections, sub-collections, this action itself will not generate duplicates of the files. All it does is to ensure that the information you're interested in shows up in multiple locations. One of the things that I really love about Zotero is that if I now go to the folder that's above the sub-collection, you'll see that that article is there as well. So any kind of source you have in a sub-collection will also show up in the collection within the hierarchy above it. So this is an automatic function that I find to be really useful. So now again, if I go back to my miscellaneous folder, and let's say I want to drag this one in there as well, then this time I want to put it in my sample folder, not my sub-collection folder. And if I click on that, now you see there are 2 items, but in my sample sub-collection, I only have that one. All right, so that's just the basic of creating these folders and subfolders for organizing. All right, so now let's go back one more time. All right. So at this point, we've reached the end of this webinar. If you found this to be useful, please let us know. If you feel like you need more peer-to-peer support with regards to Zotero, I'd like to point out a couple of additional services. We offer one-on-one appointments or private consultations with consultants at the Writing Center, and all of us have experience with at least one reference software. So if you're interested in kind of learning more about how we might use Zotero or Mendeley, or you just want a refresher, or you want to clarify something that the webinar didn't really answer for you, we encourage you to seek us out through these one-on-one appointments. There are also workshops throughout the semester, and in fact, every semester there are several workshops on either Zotero or Mendeley, and these are synchronous workshops, so you can get your questions answered live if you are interested in. So with that, thank you again for joining us for this particular webinar. We hope this was helpful for you, and we appreciate your time.